Any luck?
Oh, yep. All right, yay. All right, we are live.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to those of you in other parts of the country. It's nice to have you with us. My name is Kim Hibbs, and I'm the owner of Hibbs Homes. We are a custom home builder in St. Louis and also northern Utah. I say custom because we never build the same home twice. Everything that we build is designed specifically for our clients. Unlike a production builders are those who are going to be building in developments, in subdivisions, and they'll be building the same home, different elevations, maybe some different floor plans, but that's their business model. Whereas with a custom home builder, the client is the boss and they tell us what they're looking for, and we try to build them their dream homes. As a matter of fact, that's kind of what we do, is we make people's dreams come true. Tricia McConkey is a good friend of ours. She's also one of our go-to lenders here in the St. Louis area. Tricia, you are with Associated, and tell us a little bit about your background, if you would, please.
Sure. So I have been in the mortgage industry for 23 years, and the last 13 of those have been with Associated Bank. And since starting with Associated Bank, I really kind of narrowed my field of expertise to construction and renovation lending, and I really enjoy it. We are a portfolio lender, so that makes us unique in the fact that we aren't selling those loans off in the secondary market to another lender. We're servicing them, and therefore really making the construction and renovation program our own.
And we've enjoyed the relationship that we've developed over the past 11, 12 years. What we don't enjoy is what's going on in the market right now. Construction costs specifically related to lumber are extremely high, and I think it's causing a lot of angst in our industry, not only amongst builders, but lenders and the people, of course, who are thinking about, should I build a home? Is this a good time or do I wait? And I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this Facebook Live today, is help our potential clients and really help anyone out there try to get a better feel for, is this a good time to build? And I know we've had conversations about it behind the scenes. There's really one thing that most people are starting to hear about, and that is lumber prices. Lumber prices seem to be driving most of the construction costs right now, but there's some underlying factors as well we'll talk about as we go along. But lumber prices, I know that you and I talk about it quite frequently, because we have clients right now who are truly deciding, is this a good time to buy? So I'll give you a little bit of a background on why we find ourselves where we do today. It's kind of the perfect storm, if you will. Back in 2020, the spring of 2020, everything seemed to be moving along very nicely. There's a housing shortage as far as existing homes. There's a lot of people who want to buy homes. And then the pandemic hit. And what happened is everything stopped. Our phone stopped. Production builders stopped getting orders. Nobody was writing orders. And everybody thought that the industry itself was going to totally shut down. So what happened is the lumber mills, anticipating there was going to be no business, they too decided that they were going to shut their doors. And so for 3 or 4 months this went on where the industry was virtually silent and quiet. And then it became rather apparent that people were going to still build. And they after the shock kind of the pandemic wore off a little bit, they started thinking about what are my living conditions like? And they started thinking, if this happens again, I want to make sure I'm in a little bit of a better situation. So they started looking for bigger homes. They started looking for homes that had, spaces for kids to study and workout facilities and things like that. So the industry, as slow as it was, all of a sudden picked up again and was extremely busy. And so that then, when lumber mills were shut down, started the problem. And then to make the problems worse, as the industry picked up with all the social distancing that was required, some states still had their businesses shut down because of the pandemic. The lumber mills could not keep up with the demand for lumber. So as I said, it was kind of a perfect storm, whereas the housing industry came roaring back, remodeling industry came roaring back, do-it-yourselfers were especially busy. The demand for lumber, they could not satisfy it. And that's continued to where we are today. And then there's one other, I guess, problem that comes into this equation, is right now there's a tariff on Canadian lumber that comes into the United States. And that tariff is not helping construction price or lumber prices either.
Right.
So you combine the pandemic, the supply and demand, the tariff prices, That's where we find ourselves today. And to give everybody kind of an idea of where we are with lumber pricing, we're probably about 300 to 350 times higher than normal. So lumber is figured in 1,000 lineal feet of random boards. And if you put these random boards together, back before the pandemic, the price was $350 per 1,000 board feet. Today, do you know what that number is? It's close to $1,400. And so the average cost to build a new home, and I'm talking the average when you're talking a smaller home,
Yes.
2,500 square feet or so, the average price has gone up more than $30,000. Well, when you build larger homes like we do, I mean, sometimes we'll have homes that are 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. Our prices have gone up as much as $100,000 per home that we build. And so that's why we find ourselves where we are today. And people are wondering, is this a good time to build? And you know, what do we do with lumber prices being so high?
Yes.
You're also aware of this. There's
Yes.
concrete prices and copper prices and roofing prices and drywall. Everything
has followed.
Everything is followed, and
Yes.
a lot of it has to do not necessarily with material shortages, but supply chain shortages and that
Yes.
type of thing. So you hear the stories all the time, don't you?
Oh, I do, and I'm seeing it. I mean, I'm seeing it across the board as contracts come across, or again, custom lending, custom building. That's a time process. It's not a go out and 30 days later I'm done. So I have seen it evolve from exactly what you're talking about, where those packages of lumber prices have added to the construction costs, 30,000, 50,000, 70,000, from where an initial conversation began last, summer or last fall to where we are today.
And it really is starting to impact builders and buyers to a greater extent right now, because builders, we've been very busy. Production builders have been very busy,
Yes.
but now people are starting to second guess, is this the right time to build? And so what it's doing in the production world is production builders are seeing some of their contracts canceled. So people said, I'm going to commit to the home and here's the price. Well, those builders tried to come back and collect the cost increases because of the lumber. And so they're having more and more contracts canceled because of that. What we're seeing as a custom builder is more and more clients are coming back to us and saying, we need to come up with other options, or maybe let's relook at what we can do.
Yes.
We've talked about this because you have many of our clients right now. What we're doing is taking them back through the redesign process. We're trying to simplify the design of the house somewhat. We're trying to shrink the footprint a little bit. We're trying to rethink about some of the materials we're using inside of the house, how to still build a very efficient, very durable, very comfortable home, but maybe use some different materials.
Yes.
But we have probably 6 projects right now that we're in redesign for, because we're really trying to help our clients find ways to cut costs and yet still be able to build the home. Now, the good news is we're able to do that with most of our clients, because as a custom builder, we can quickly move through this process and then reprice it and give them a new budget. I think the other thing that people need to realize, that this still is a very attractive time to build because of our historically low interest rates, right?
Yes, no, I totally agree, and it's a conversation I'm definitely having with clients more and more often, because they are approaching me with the concern of the rising costs and how far can I go before this project no longer works for me, or should I wait and see if costs are going to come down. It's almost like that old question everybody would always ask you, should I lock in my interest rate? Now everybody wants to know if they should wait because our supply is going to go down for building. And what I'm advising clients is that, yes, you may see pricing come down. Some things will come down, some things won't. Once the market is used to paying that price, you might not see that price come down, because now the consumer is adjusted to paying that. And I think it's really important right now, when interest rates are still really low, to go ahead and continue that building process, because what will happen later on, if you do wait for prices to come down, and let's say you decide, I'm going to wait a year or 18 months, then interest rates are going to go up. And so you're going to still be in that same payment that you were a year and a half ago, but except for this time, now interest rates have went up. And so instead of spending more money on getting what you want in your home, now you're spending more money on the interest rate on the loan. And so you're going to get less because the interest rate is going to cost you more.
Right, and it's interesting because that's what I tell clients too. But I do recommend that you speak with your lender and talk with a financial advisor about this, because here's what I'm hearing. I'm a trustee for the National Association of Home Builders, and I try to stay on top of this as much as possible. And everybody wants to know, when are these prices going to come back down? I know you touched on it a little bit, and here's what I know is that it will be a while. I think we're reaching the peak of the lumber. So we're going to kind of crest with our lumber pricing. They think by July, maybe August, and then they say that they believe we'll have a slow retreat. But to your point, I believe that the days of $350 per thousand board feet are gone. I think the new normal is going to be probably closer to 6, 7, maybe even 800 once things settle out, because that's what people are used to paying, and that's resetting the market, as you mentioned. And I don't even think we're going to see those numbers though until sometime in mid-2022. At least that's what the prediction is. So to try and wait this out is going to be very difficult, because while, to your point, we're waiting for prices to come down, what if they never do? And then what's the interest rate pressure going to look like? Address that a little bit, if you would, as far as where you think interest rates will be going over the next few years.
I definitely feel that interest rates are going to be on the rise. I don't think that's any secret. Most recent conversations have been, what is the Fed going to look to do with rates in November and December of this year? Certainly the conversation is that they will go up. Now, mortgage rates are a long-term rate, so they're not as directly tied to the Fed as they are to the 10-year Treasury. So the 10-year Treasury is something good for consumers to watch and see how that rate is changing, because that does have more of a direct correlation on what your long-term interest rates are. But I definitely see them going up. I feel that it will be a steady rise.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be anything where we're going to wake up tomorrow morning and interest rates will be 4%, but I think they're going to continue to rise, and we're going to continue to see that, and that will evolve over the next month, the next 3 months, and 6 months. I mean, it's just going to continue. It has to.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We actually have a couple of great questions coming in. Do you lock in pricing on a custom home in a contract or stay adjustable? A lot of that has to do with the builder. There's a couple of different type of contracts that custom builders will use. Some will use what's called a fixed price contract, where they're going to guarantee you a price to build the home. That's usually done a little bit more with semi-custom homes than true custom homes. A lot of custom builders are still going to do what's called a cost plus contract, which means they won't lock in a price, and as the prices move up and down, you either share in some of the savings, or you end up spending more. But here's the one thing I can tell you regarding lumber, whether it's a fixed price contract or it's a cost plus contract, builders right now every one of them are putting a clause in their contract to address the rising lumber prices. So as lumber prices go up, that has to be passed on to clients, because the builders simply can't sustain sustain the cost, because it's just too much money right now.
Yes, and actually that leads to a good question. I think also that would be a good thing to address is that, I've gotten the question from clients, how come builders at the time of the contract aren't going and getting all those supplies at the time I write the contract? So I think that would be a good thing to explain.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because even though you might sign a contract for a home, it could be a few months before you're actually ready to build the home and have the lumber delivered. And with the volatile market that we're in right now, lumber yards are only guaranteeing pricing for 2 weeks. Usually it's much longer than that. But right now they are only guaranteeing prices for 2 weeks, and there's such a shortage of lumber out there, they're no longer holding lumber for builders. So even if a builder came to them and said, I'm going to buy this and pay for this lumber, I want you to hold it for me, they won't do that, because number one, they don't have the room, and number two, there's too many other builders out there that are building. So with the lumber shortage, they're trying to keep the lumber moving. So it's one of those things where there's really not an answer to try to beat the problem that we're in right now. You just have to be patient and understand that as the prices go up, it's something that's going to have to be, you have to figure out how to pay for them in the budget.
Right.
A good builder, what we do is we typically try to understand when the client is going to need the lumber and when that lumber will be delivered to the job site, and then we factor that into the budget. So the client is not surprised on the back end that there's a 5%, 10% increase or whatever.
So you're trying to anticipate those
Yeah.
changes,
Yeah.
knowing that it could take some time.
For sure. I think that's one of the ways to look at it. Another question had a question about the source and the origin of the Canadian lumber tariff. It's 10% tariff, and it was actually put into effect several years ago during the Trump administration. And I know they've tried to work it out a couple of different times with Washington and all, but basically it's for Canadian softwood lumber, and much of it's used here in the United States. And that 10% tariff, even though, or in addition to what's going on with our lumber shortages and lumber pricing here, certainly is not helping. I do know that the National Association of Home Builders is working very actively to try to, get that tariff to go away. And they're also trying to work with lawmakers to understand the position that everybody is in with the current prices of lumber. It's amazing because you can raise the price of a house. There's a statistic out there with the National Association of Home Builders, and it's something, if you raise the price of the average home, it's $1,000 or $2,000, something very small, you're going to price out hundreds of thousands of people who can no longer afford to build a home. And so it's really kind of, as I mentioned before, almost that perfect storm where it's affecting builders, it's affecting homeowners, it's affecting home buyers, it's affecting lenders, and there's not one answer. The builder can't pay for the surcharges. The lumber suppliers who you're getting your lumber can't, because they're buying it directly from the mills. So everybody is out there working hard to try to find a solution to it. Another question is, do cash buyers have an advantage if they build beside rates? Good question. I'm trying to think of a scenario which would give them an advantage, and it really, in this market, I can't think of a situation that a cash buyer would have an advantage.
I can't either.
Prices are just
because,
changing too quickly.
Yes, and you can't hold all those supplies. So even outside of lumber, roofing or windows, all those things are changing in price and escalating, and you can't go out and pre-buy an entire house and say, okay, now everybody hold this until we're ready, and then we can.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the volatility of everything, it's just very difficult. So I think that the bottom line takeaway is that lumber price or construction price increases are going to be around for a while. We hope to see them start to ease off a little bit as the summer and fall comes up. Maybe next summer get back to a little bit more near normal, but the normal before the pandemic is gone.
Right.
And also watch for interest rates to slowly continue to creep up. So my suggestion is, if you truly want to build, this still is a good time. Find a builder, great builders across the country who are willing to work with you. Maybe work to design a home that might be a little bit simpler, maybe a little bit smaller. Maybe you can come back and finish the lower level later. Maybe you can add, you can do some things down the road that you're not doing now. But I still would look into it and find a builder who's really willing to partner with you and help you through this process, because I still think with historically low interest rates, with pricing going to peak out at some point here, it's worth exploring.
Oh, it definitely is. Definitely. And again, depending upon who your lender is and what construction program they have, also try to reach out to lenders that have maybe not what is considered your traditional construction loan, where it's a very short-term loan and it's tied to short-term rates, and then you need to refinance, where like with Associated Bank, we have a one-time closed construction loan.
Great.
It's giving you your long-term financing up front. We have options in terms of long-term locking in a 30-year fixed rate up front, all kinds of things that, again, that can help you vet where that mortgage payment's going to be, so that even if maybe you can't control where pricing's going, you can control where your interest rate's going to be on your loan when the home is complete.
So let me mention that again so people are clear. That one-time close means that you're going to lock in this lower interest rate up front when you sign the contract, even though the home might take 6, 7, 8 months, whatever to build. Your loan, your interest rate is locked in up front.
Yes, that
so
is correct.
Look for lenders who offer that option as well. Because I think that is a great way to kind of insulate yourself as well against these rising prices and potentially rising interest rate costs. Erin had an interesting question. She said, besides lumber, what are some of the other increases in materials we're expecting? And I know she asked me to list 2, but I can't just list 2 because this is no joke. Probably 4 to 5 times a week I will get an email across my desk with suppliers and vendors who have pricing increases coming up. I know drywall is one of them that had 2 different pretty hefty price hikes over the past few months.
Yes.
And again, it's not necessarily that the labor prices are going up, because this is not labor related. This
No,
is all
it's supply.
material supply. Yeah, it's all material related because of supply and demand. And I know that the majority of the problem goes to supply chain disruptions. There are a lot of trucks sitting idle around the country because there's no drivers to deliver goods around the country. So this is kind of a problem that has many different tentacles that goes out into the industry. But I would say drywall, I've heard about roofing increases, concrete increases,
Yes.
copper. For your electrical wiring, not only are prices going up, but I hear there's a shortage that could happen. So, the fact that we deal with really good, reputable electricians helps us because they're going to continue to get their product. But I don't know, Aaron, if there's anything that's really insulated from what's going on right now, because we're seeing pricing increases pretty much everywhere.
Yes, no, I totally agree with that.
Let's see. Okay, anything else you want to add? I know we're going to try to wrap things up soon. Any other questions? We still have a few minutes. Please let us know. But I think we've covered much of the
Yes.
information.
No, I think that we have. Like I said, I think that, there's a misnomer out there that, perhaps builders are behind driving these prices. And I can honestly tell you that is not true. Honestly, if anything, I can tell you that builders are really doing what they can to help the client. I've seen where, they're actually cutting things on their end to help
And
the client.
we are absolutely
Yes.
doing that.
Yes.
We are trying to do our very best in ways that we can, whether it is, we take a look at the totality of the project and our fees are certainly, we've discounted fees to help some of our clients. We're working
Yes.
with other ways of maybe helping them get some material at better pricing that we're taking care of. So again, I think what the takeaway is that no, builders are not behind this.
No.
Lumber suppliers are not behind this, and a lot of times people think that maybe the lumber mills are, maybe that there's something on that level. I just don't know that that's the case, because I truly believe we find ourselves in just that perfect storm where the supply is far outstripping the demand and the lumber mills simply can't keep up. What's interesting, I read an article recently that even though there's such a heavy demand for lumber right now, there are no plans to open up any new mills in the near future. So until either the until the demand for homes backs down or prices get to a level where people are saying we're not going to build anymore, I don't know that there's really a true end in sight to this.
No. And I would also say another thing with your lender, see how your lender's partnering with the builder and the build process as well. We at Associated Bank have recently introduced some new deposits and allowances that we're allowing in the process to help the builder
Good point.
order their supplies sooner, to help lock in that price, to help get deposits out on things we typically weren't making or allowing a deposit on before the pandemic in these rise in prices, that we are also trying to vet that increase and help both the client and the builder stick closer to that budget or stick as close as they can as to those lower prices.
That was one of the emails I enjoyed receiving recently when you did, because Associated stepped up and said, we will now allow deposits on a whole list of items, because you're trying to help the builder by at least placing some orders where they can. Lumber is off the table, but some of the things like appliances and windows and doors and all that, if you put your deposit down, you can lock in pricing. So that's a big one there. I had a question: has anything gone down in the midst of the changes? Unfortunately, I would say no. The good news is labor costs have remained relatively steady. I don't know of anything that's really gone down.
I don't.
Most everything has, for one reason or another, definitely gone up. And another question, development costs are higher through this? Yes. Here's the thing about development costs, though. We went through a big jump with development cost a few years ago, where it used to be fairly reasonable to develop a parcel of land. Now your development costs are not rising nearly as quickly as the true construction costs are. We kind of went through that with the development industry a few years ago, but just kind of the normal cost there as far as development is concerned. Now, I guess it depends upon the complexity of the development, because we're starting to see some of the pricing for that actual infrastructure material start to escalate a little bit as well.
Which makes sense, that
Yeah.
corresponds with what's going on in the market.
Yep. So, I don't know, Melody's behind the scenes back there. Anything else that you want us to hit while we're here?
Well, Aaron wanted to know if development costs are just higher through and through for everyone.
I think so. I think construction costs in general, development costs in general are, and as I mentioned, development cost really is something that came about a few years ago, and haven't seen a real big appreciation there like we have the construction costs.
She also was wondering if you could forward that email to her seriously.
You mean Trish's email? I love that email.
Richard Riley asked, what does the labor market look like these days? How, if at all, does it affect scheduling?
Great question by Richard. Richard's a good friend of ours, does really good work in the St. Louis area. My experience is that our biggest problem continues to be pricing. Now, yes, labor continues to be an issue. We're building out in northern Utah again out there as well. Same kind of feel there. If we schedule far enough in advance, we're not having a labor shortage. But you can't call up your trades 2 weeks out like you used to be able to and get a full crew there to work on the house. Right now, you have to give them a 6-week warning, a 4-week warning,
Yes.
and then 2 weeks, and then still have to be flexible. Because of the fact that we do have somewhat of a shortage, you just have to prepare in advance. And it is taking a little bit longer to build our homes right now, especially during the pandemic, because we would have one trade in at a time at certain points and things like that. But generally speaking, we're telling our clients it's taking about a month longer than normal to build the house too. As far as what the future looks like, it's hard to answer that question because I know that we've been battling labor shortages for a while. I would like to think that sooner or later, when people feel comfortable going back into the workforce, that maybe we'll pick up some steam there. Hard to answer that though. I can just say right now it's taking a little bit longer, not horrible, as long as your builder's planning ahead.
But also your demand is up. So, we had a labor shortage,
Yeah.
which was manageable, but I think, again, in the midst of the pandemic, I've said the pandemic could have never done anything better for the housing industry. In general, I don't care what way you're looking at a house
And then the
right
lumber
now.
shortage.
Yes. So, just the number of people who are looking to do something in construction and also renovation, it's just making the demand for the framing crew, right? That many more people are looking for people to do framing or your tile or whatever it may be. There's just that many more people seeking that type of work.
Well, put it this way, if you look at what the inventory of existing homes, the for sale homes that are on the market should be, it's usually 5 or 6 months in St. Louis.
Right.
Right now, it's lower than a month.
Yes.
That will just tell you there's a severe housing shortage right now. And there's pent up demand like you would not believe. But that's why I understand kind of the hesitation is, what do we do? Do we build now? Do we not build? Because those who are looking to sell a home, if they then have to go into the market and buy a home, then they're all of a sudden bidding, multiple bid situations going on,
Exactly.
prices are being driven. It's a very tough time, and that's why we hope this information that we provided today has been somewhat helpful for everybody.
We have one more question before we have to sign off. Aaron wanted to know, obviously more people want new construction. How many communities do you plan on developing in the next 3 years? Just your company. So I think she might have joined after we talked about custom
Gotcha.
versus production.
Yeah, so we're a custom home builder, so we're not developing communities. I can speak to what I know about the St. Louis market and what I know about the Utah market because I know a lot of the production builders. Everybody is still very bullish on residential construction. Everybody, a lot of the production builders and the developers also understand that there's a shortage of land. Land is scarce. So everybody's out there competing for a lot of the same parcels. So what I can tell you is in both markets, you're going to have continued heavy demand to develop lots because there's a heavy demand, as we were just talking about. There is a pent-up demand that should be barring any kind of any kind of unforeseen major incident around the country or the world, there's pent-up demand that will not be satisfied for years. And that means builders and developers need to continue to develop the land on which to build new homes. And so that's really going to happen across the country.
Yep.
Okay. Tricia, thank you.
Well, thank you.
It's been good.
Yes.
We thank everybody for tuning in as well. And I say this, we have, you've been on our podcast. We have a podcast, it's called It's the Custom. Or the Art of Custom, the Art of Custom. If there's a lot of really good information in that podcast as well. If you want to,
Episode 4.
That's right. Tricia is on episode 4, which dropped a few weeks ago.
Yes.
So if you found this conversation interesting and want to learn more about building a home or just the construction industry, check out the Art of Custom podcast. And then we're always accessible too, even though you might live in another part of the country. Shoot us an email, link to, or communicate with us through Facebook. We're happy to try to answer questions along the way. It is a fun process. Building a home is very rewarding, a fun process. A little bit frustrating right now because of the pricing,
Yes.
but if you have the right professionals, if you have the right builder, the right designer, the right lender, all working together, you really can pull it off and still make your dream come true in this market, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It should be fun.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melody.